So it seems like it's been a while since I did a video about games that you recommended that I check out, and if you're not familiar, every time you drop a comment and make a recommendation for a game to check out on the Steam Deck, I always read those. So if you're ever wondering if I actually go through and read all of the comments and check out the things that you're playing, the answer is absolutely yes. I don't always get to every single one of them, but periodically I like to do videos like this where I highlight the games that you recommended just to kind of get outside my comfort zone and try some new things. So all that being said, let's just go ahead and jump in with the first title that was recommended. It is a delightfully chill little game that is probably perfect for spring, recommended by John's Ducks, is Grow Song of the Evertree. Now, I'm pretty sure John had recommended this after I'd highlighted Disney Dreamlight Valley in my Cozy Games for Winter video a few months back, and I gotta say, John, you were totally right on point with this one. In Grow Song of the Evertree, you're on a mission to restore the Evertree itself. Once a wellspring of life in the cosmos, breathing life into a variety of worlds on its branches, it's now in a terrible state, so it's up to you, a lone Evertree alchemist, to put things right. Well, you're not really alone, rather you are joined by your family of Book and Coppertop, who will guide you down the path of learning to pull up roots, smash rubble, plant seeds, and just generally start putting order to the chaos. Aesthetically, it feels like stepping into a storybook and is just oozing with charm, not just because these things are cute, and believe me, it is sickeningly adorable, but the writing's really self-aware too, and have me legitimately laughing out loud in spots. The mechanics are incredibly simple, and in that way I'd say it's approachable for players of any age, but make no mistake, this definitely isn't Stardew Valley. And I'm not saying that as a negative, I just mean that while Stardew Valley can be relaxing, you can definitely make it a stressful affair, and nothing about Grow makes you feel rushed or anxious so far. It just gently nudges you in the direction of capturing critters with your bug net, pulling up weeds, and gradually opens up more and more interesting mechanics. But one thing I particularly liked about the game is that it emphasizes taking time to rest amidst all of your hard work. So if you're looking for a game to beat into submission and roll credits, Grow might not be for you, but as someone who really likes games that adopt a slow down and mosey mentality, it was definitely for me. Steam Deck performance was solid out of the gate at the default settings, though if you do want to enable depth of field and ramp up a couple of the options to literally my hardware is on fire settings, you should still get above 50 FPS easily enough. But no matter what setting you go for, the visuals really do a great job of painting this dreamy fantasy world to get lost in after a long day. So John, thanks again for the recommendation, and I'm definitely looking forward to spending more than a few lazy Sundays slowly restoring the worlds of the Evertree. But as much as I love a good slowdown and mosey game, I also really love a good over-the-top action game, so huge thanks to Fenraziel, Gadget Guru, Noi, and Roboito for all recommending a game that I had in my collection and had not yet checked out, but I have now finally played it, and that is Vanquish. And again, Vanquish had been sitting on my backlog forever, and I even had a physical copy of the combo pack with Bayonetta for the PS4, but now, having finally fired it up, a few things immediately jumped out to me that I had either completely forgotten about, or at least never noticed. The first is that this is a Platinum game, and two, this is a Shinji Mikami game. For the uninitiated, that's the guy who directed Resident Evil, the Resident Evil remake, Resident Evil 4, The Evil Within, and most recently, Hi-Fi Rush. So I've learned over the years that when I see his name pop up, I'm probably in for a pretty good time. In Vanquish, you'll be playing as Sam Gideon, a DARPA soldier, and your mission will be to stop Russia from using a microwave transmitter to devastate New York City after they've already orchestrated an attack on San Francisco. Sam comes off as a pretty typically gruff, over-the-top action hero, but what is atypical is his augmented reaction suit, which lets him boost and slide around the battlefield with ease. At its bare essence, I would say it's a campy action game with corny dialogue, but crucially it has style for days, and that is exactly how I like my action games to be. I mean, obviously I don't mind games with a stronger narrative, but just like I don't need every movie to give me deeper insight into the human condition or anything, I also don't need every game I play to have a super thoughtful narrative. Sometimes I just want to turn my brain off and bust up a bunch of robots in fantastically over-the-top ways, and boy howdy does Vanquish deliver on that front. But make no mistake, even though the story and characters aren't particularly deep, the mechanics are extremely fulfilling. Sam can switch modes between careful, deliberate cover shooting and slide boosting to close the gap pretty much instantly. But taking advantage of your suit's boost capabilities or slow motion evasion comes at the expense of power management. So every time you're in the thick of a firefight and thinking about rushing the enemy or repositioning for fire, a three-way tug of war gets triggered in your brain. Can you soak up any stray bullets that might hit you as you engage the boost? Do you have enough ammo to deal with whatever threat that you're focused on? And will you have enough power in the suit to complete the maneuver without becoming Swiss cheese? It definitely takes some time to get into the rhythm, but once you do, it is fantastic fun in a way that I just haven't experienced in a cover shooter before. So far, I've managed to take down what I believe is the first major multi-stage boss battle, but I had really great fun learning the ins and outs of Sam's movement, and eventually coming out on top after some trial and error. Picking up new games in the heat of battle or upgrading existing ones is satisfying, and at least from what I've seen so far, the boss battles feel like retro challenges that have been dragged into the 3D era. Deck performance at default settings provides a near constant 60 FPS experience, though I did notice a few dips during the larger scale battles as I got deeper into the story, but still it is completely playable, looks great, and is one I definitely want to see through to completion. Next up, let's move on to another title that's set in the future, albeit one that's more firmly rooted in cyberpunk territory than over-the-top sci-fi action, and that would be Cloudpunk, recommended by Carlos Morales. So like Vanquish, Cloudpunk was completely new territory for me. I'd only seen the cover art when I run across it on Steam now and again, but was delighted to find out that it's a game about being a somewhat shady courier in a cyberpunk world where you cruise around in a hover car making deliveries of an often questionable nature. You can tell just glancing at the gameplay that it takes a lot of cues from sci-fi classics like Blade Runner, but as soon as I got rolling or, well, flying around in my hover, I absolutely couldn't stop thinking about Corbin Dallas from The Fifth Element. But unlike The Fifth Element, Cloudpunk is a lot more subdued as an experience. You'll mostly be making deliveries and talking to citizens around the city to learn more about their stories, whether that's a surprisingly charming gang member or your Cloudpunk dispatch who slowly doles out more information about your past and the world around you. Speaking of, there is a lot of voice acting in this game, and while I'd say the performances are hit or miss, they definitely do a serviceable job of making the world more intriguing as you zip around the various districts making deliveries. Navigating in your hover is similar to Broomflight and Hogwarts Legacy, where you can ascend and descend to a limited degree, but if you opt to stay on the roads that are available, you'll get a big boost in speed. I'm not sure if there are any timed missions sneaking up on me, but at least so far it's been a pretty leisurely experience, so I haven't minded going off-road just to explore and take in the sights. Although I did find myself gravitating to its first-person view more often than not. It's got a Minecraft-y vibe for sure, and I really think the game is better for it, because it does provide a less dour backdrop for its characters than your typical, future city corporations bag gloominess. At certain points there are branching paths based on decisions you make, and I'm intrigued to know how much that's going to impact the story. Performance was okay, but not really exceptional on the deck. Even dropping the graphics to low and disabling bloom, I was still seeing it vary pretty wildly on deck between 40 and 60 FPS, so a locked experience would probably serve you best if you do end up checking this one out. But regardless, I'm still really enjoying this slightly more lighthearted take on what has historically been kind of a depressing genre, I would say, so Carlos, thanks again for the heads up. But hey, if you're looking for a decidedly not gloomy futuristic setting, this next one was recommended to me by Heavy Shadow Sound and Zach Schaefer, and that is Sable. Now, Zach described this game as being his favorite Breath of the Wild, and I have to say that's the perfect descriptor. Similar to Breath of the Wild, Sable is an open-world exploration game, although it doesn't seem to have any violence that I've seen so far. You'll play as the titular Sable and experience her coming-of-age story as a young girl setting out on a rite of passage to find her place in the ruined desert planet of Midden. Despite being a desert planet, I have to say these are some of the most striking visuals I've seen in a while on the artistic front. To my eyes, it almost looked like someone had reskinned Adventure Time in the style of Rollerdrome, and I say that as a huge compliment. Despite being somewhat sparsely populated as you make your way out into the open world on your hoverbike, it can definitely come off a bit empty, but not in a bad way, just again in a Breath of the Wild way where everything just feels like it has room to breathe. Depending on what you're looking for in a game, you'll either find that to be really boring or really relaxing, but I'm definitely in the latter camp. And a lot of that is thanks not only to the visuals, but also the excellent soundtrack on offer. Sometimes out of nowhere it swells up with some truly exceptional tunes from Japanese Breakfast, and it really caught me off guard the same way the Death Stranding soundtrack did the first time I really started to understand the scale of its world. Aesthetics aside, the other thing that really grabbed me was just how sharp the writing is in Sable. There's no voice dialogue and every character is wearing a mask, but still, these are really memorable characters and some of the moments in its opening couple of hours are a real emotional gut punch. On the gameplay front, it's mostly exploration and fetch quests so far, but I'm completely okay with that if for no other reason than just to seek out even more of the story beats on offer, and ultimately just see how Sable's narrative's going to play out. So Zach and Heavy, thank you again for the recommendation, not just because it was an amazing game for me to just check out on a random Monday, but also it introduced me to Japanese Breakfast, which was a very cool bonus. And last up is a very recent recommendation from Kill Repeat that was pitched as a hidden gem for Vanillaware fans, and it is definitely that, but it's also a complete steal at $3.99, and that is The Vagrant. If you've ever played a Vanillaware game in the vein of Dragon's Crown or Muramasa, you will definitely feel right at home with The Vagrant. You'll be playing as Vivian, a sellsword who's on a mission to track down her missing father. Now, far and away, the two things that stand out most are the combat and the visuals. It has that same watercolor look that you'd find in a game like Odin Sphere, with a vivid colorscape and well-executed parallax scrolling as you make your way through its 2D environments. And the combat's no slouch either. I don't know if it's quite as robust as the games it pays homage to, but it was consistently fun in the opening hours, and attacks have a real weight to them thanks to solid solid animation, and pitch-perfect sound effects that make every hit feel meaty and impactful. There's some real depth to the mechanics as well, where you can cancel out of moves, perform light juggles on enemies to continue your assault, and you'll even have the requisite skill tree, enhancements, and enchantments to make Vivian even more threatening as you soldier on. There's even a lightweight cooking system where if you order food from restaurants in a town, that then unlocks a recipe for it, which you can then cook at campfire save points to buff up even further. And that's definitely helpful because the game's boss encounters can present a stiff but not unmanageable challenge even on the medium difficulty setting. Also, it might seem linear, but there are definitely hidden riches you can uncover in chests or smashing objects in the environment, and you're usually well rewarded for going off the beaten path a little bit to explore side areas that border the main path to each story objective. Deck performance is mostly great, although in an opening story encounter with a ton of enemies on screen it did dip pretty substantially in frame rate, although later boss fights and creature battles seem to play out pretty steadily, so that might have just been an outlier. Either way, if you're into hack and slash games with just enough RPG elements to keep things interesting, I think this is pretty much a no-brainer. So thanks again, Kill, for the heads up, because not only was it a blast revisiting the genre when I really hadn't picked up my Vita in a while, but it also reminded me that at some point I really do need to check out 13 Sentinels Aegis Rim and really rescue that from rotting on my backlog. Alright, that's it for this one. Again, every time you make a recommendation, essentially what I do is I just take a quick screenshot of it, I drop it into a folder, and then periodically I review all of those suggestions to see if there are a few games that I could check out, either because I just completely overlooked them, maybe I was completely unfamiliar with them, or maybe it was something that is just, well outside my comfort zone, so it's a nice way for me to sample games that I wouldn't have otherwise played. So naturally, if you have any suggestions for games I should check out for a future video like this, or just in general that you find to be really, really enjoyable, please do let me know. As always, thank you so much for watching these videos. I really appreciate you. Take care, and I'll see you on the next one. Bye.